Another thing that we evaluated and wanted to come to a determination is the age of the decedent. And what we found is that the dating that we did was most consistent with the age of a middle-aged man. We're guessing somebody in the mid to late 40s. And the way we made that determination is also look at certain features in the skeleton that would give us some clues and hints as to what his age may have been. Again, going back to the skull, the sutures in the skull are the areas where the skull bones fuse. When babies are born, these bones are not connected. They're free-floating, and there's a soft spot in the front, the anterior fontanelle, and a smaller soft spot in the back, the posterior fontanelle, which exists at the union of these bones. As children become older, functionally, these bones come together, and even though they may not have bony fusion, they have functional fusion. They're not loose. They don't move around as they would in a newborn. As individuals age and as decades go by, bony fusion occurs, where the calcium deposits occur, and sometimes with time, these suture lines that are easy to see in a younger individual become completely obliterated. They disappear because those areas completely fill with bone. By looking at those suture lines, we can make a determination of the age of the individual, and by looking at those lines were most consistent with an individual that is middle-aged, probably somebody in their 40s. In addition, we looked at other things as a determinant of age. We look at the growth plates of the individual, and I don't have long bones to show you, but growth plates are the portion of the bone where growth occurs. And in children, those growth plates are completely open, and if you look at them on x-ray, there's no evidence whatsoever of bone at those locations, because that's where bone is being created. As we age, those growth plates close and become obliterated. So we can look at growth plates and know whether an individual is in infancy, in childhood, in young adulthood, or whether they passed young adulthood. In our decedent, all of those growth plates are closed. So we know this is an individual that is past the age of 25 simply on that basis. We also see evidence of the bones of wear and tear. And with time, there are changes that are associated with arthritis on all weight-bearing bones, or all bones that are subject to a lot of the stresses in life. And in evaluating this individual, we saw ample evidence of osteoarthritis and wear and tear that also would suggest the aging process. If you look at the spine itself, these little areas between the vertebrae are cushions called discs. If you know individuals who have disc disease or herniated discs or slip discs, these bumpers, the areas between the bone, these cushions are what we're talking about. As we become older and older, these areas become dried out. They become subject to the wear and tear in life, and the spaces between these bones become thinner. In addition, in areas where wear and tear develops, extra bone can develop. This extra bone at these junctions sometimes will stick out like little lips, and that's called osteophytic lipping. And those were present not only in the lower portion of the spine of the decedent, but also on a lot of the long bones of an individual. His knees, particularly his kneecaps, showed evidence of ample degenerative change associated with the wear and tear of life. This is the spine of a young individual. There isn't much in the way of osteophytic lipping. The spaces between the discs appear normal, and the curvature of the spine appears normal. In our decedent in E-Town, many of the spaces between the discs were completely obliterated, and there was bony bridging, bones that actually formed and connected most of the thoracic spine, the upper part of the spine below the neck. In addition, the patient had a curvature of the upper spine, which probably would have resulted in him walking, being hunched over, because so many of his vertebrae were connected and his inflammatory disease of the spine was so severe. Observation of this area and also observation of a couple of the joints, the sacroiliac joints of the pelvis, suggests that this individual may have had a condition, an inflammatory arthropathy, which is a condition of inflammation of the joints, and what we saw is most consistent with a disease called ankylosing spondylitis. So this disease results in severe debility of many of the individuals who get it. This is most likely a disease of males, though some females have it and it has a male predominance, and usually begins in the early middle age of individuals and oftentimes progresses to the point where people can be, without treatment, severely disabled and severely compromised as a result of the condition. So we believe this individual may have had that condition. Condition is so severe sometimes that the amount of restriction and the amount of debility as a result of their being hunched over can be sufficient to cause respiratory difficulties or even heart difficulties. So it's a big deal.